Pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how the development of the Western industrial world, and so this is beginning sort of in the later 1700s, or probably the mid 1700s, you're really starting to see the early signs of it, but certainly picking up speed in the late 1700s and then really kicking into high gear in, say, around the 1830s. The Western Industrial Revolution, as was evidenced in Britain, created a different sort of society, and that society involved something very unique in human history, involved a fairly broad partnership between the rulers and the people, and the technical experts, the innovators, the inventors, the people who were going to maintain the machinery and operate it, and so on. So given there's such a broad spread of factories and manufacturing facilities, this required people of technical capability, which changed the very structure of education, levels of literacy. The amount of people that could read and write was fairly limited when the Industrial Revolution took off, but this grew to pretty much universal literacy or close to it during those industrial or years of industrial growth. Now that didn't mean that there weren't sort of semi-literate labourers and so on. They were still there, but the breadth of involvement of various people, and this was added to by the mobilisation of people in World War I to work in factories, to serve in the armed forces, World War II. So again, this was all part of a wider effect. Some of it sort of almost organic, I guess, if you think of in the industrial spread, but this changed the very nature of society from a small elite of, say, people that controlled the land, the aristocrats in Britain, as an example, who controlled the land and thus agricultural production, which was the source of wealth and the source of power and control. So they moved into, a situation of partnership with a broad mass of people. They kind of had to. They didn't have the technical expertise. They weren't the innovators. They weren't the inventors. But they saw the benefit in investing in those people, investing in the innovators, investing in the factories and so on. So many of them did quite well out of it all. And so this created an incredible spread or a multiplication, if you like, of the number of people that were involved in running the country. Now, the level of involvement, we say, well, these people might have a say, but not a big say. These people had more say. But if we go to the time of the American colonial rebellion or revolution, so let's say go to around that time, 1780s, around there, and have a look at in Britain, the amount of people who were effectively running everything. And there was about, give or take, about 3,000 people were running the country. They were making all the decisions. They controlled the government. They controlled all the land. There was hardly any land they didn't control. And they controlled the commerce. They were the only people who had the capital to invest, pretty much. And so 3,000 people, that was it. Now, there was no partnership with the other people. There was a degree of nationalism, and that created a form of partnership, but there wasn't a partnership in the decision-making process. The people had no real influence on the decision-making process. Now, if we look at the amount of people who could vote in that time, you had to have property qualification and this sort of stuff. So there was a fairly small group of people that could vote. I mean, Britain was ostensibly democratic, but it was more a democracy where the aristocrats and the landowners shared power with the crown. And the crown had lost a lot of power, particularly after the 1688 so-called Glorious Revolution, where the Parliament effectively said, look, we don't want you anymore. The king, we want someone else. So why don't you leave, and we'll install our own candidate. And not that the king didn't have powers, or the monarch didn't have powers. They did, but they were not the sovereign power of the land was Parliament. Now the Parliament were prepared to share power with the monarch, but increasingly in a figurehead sense. So again, we're talking a very small number of people. Now let's look as now the image in the thumbnail here. That's the spinning jenny, which was one of the earlier inventions. In fact, you could even say it was things like the spinning jenny that kicked off the Industrial Revolution. So this meant that a worker that could produce, for example, one piece of woven cloth, say cotton as an example, one piece of woven cloth a day, that with the spinning jenny could now produce 25. This is the earlier designs of the spinning jenny, 25 pieces of cloth in a day. This was a huge change. And given that, aside from agriculture, textile was one of the world's huge industries at the time, this was a massive change in productivity. One worker can now produce 25 pieces of cloth. So you've still only got, you're buying one machine, one spinning jenny, you've got one worker to pay, and yet you can produce 25 times as much and change the entire economics of clothing and fabric, or production of fabric, and improved designs of the spinning jenny that came along fairly soon afterwards. We're increasing productivity. In some claims that it was as much as 100 times the productive output. So we've got designers of the spinning jenny, then the people that are maintaining and fixing the spinning jenny, and the people that are administering and organising the factories. So there's a lot of, if you like, virtuous circle jobs and positions are being created here that are outside the immediate control of an aristocrat that owns acreage, and that acreage produces crops, and they can control the people that live there. The people who live there live at the pleasure of they live in the houses owned by the aristocrats. They till the land owned by the aristocrats. They're nothing more really than tenant farmers, and barely different from the serfs of the medieval times. But now, in an industrial sense, or in the Industrial Revolution, there's a whole new class, many different classes of people that are needed, and they're needed by the rulers. The rulers just can't do without them. Say, that's my land, you grow turnips on that, we're all good to go. That's not it anymore. The rulers don't even understand the technology. They can barely comprehend it. So they need the experts and the technical people, the innovators, the engineers, the designers, the technical operators. They need all those sort of people to operate the design and operate the steam trains, and the people who are doing the smelting of the advanced sort of steel that are needed for railway tracks. There's a million jobs have been created by this technical industrial revolution, and there is a partnership that's formed between the people who have that expertise, which is a large group of people, because on a manufacturing basis, you have a very wide dispersal of expertise and manufacturing and so on. Factories all over the place, and people with the technical expertise all over the place. And you need a lot of them. You can't just have one or two technical expertise that are pushing buttons on a computer and moving money around. As international financiers, you need a lot of people on the ground to do this. This created the partnership, as I say, which was added to by the mass mobilisation of World War I and II, and so on. Add into this mix the increasing literacy, nationalism, all this sort of stuff. Then you've got a very unique period of time of a partnership between the people and the rulers. Now, on top of that, during that time, and because of it, and one sort of was organically caused by the other, which then organically moved again to cause more of it. So from 1832 onwards, the Reform Bill, as it was known in England, where the politicians willingly increased the franchise to more of the people that had effectively well-paid jobs or owned property, that sort of thing. And then by the 1880s, the number of people who could could vote was many times what it was even 50 years previously, and incorporated pretty much all or most of this new technical class of people. So now this is somewhere, depending on whose numbers you look at or how you subdivide this, something in the order of 2/3 to 3/4 of men over the age of 23 could now vote. Now this is quite broad based, considering that it was something like 7 or 8% 50 years earlier. So that'll give you an idea as to the extent to which the ruling class and the technical class merged. And of course, again, increasing literacy and all sorts of other things that, that were part of it. If you can't have a technical class of people that aren't literate. You can to I suppose, a very limited extent, but basically you can't give written instructions to people unless they're fully literate and they're able to read, technical diagrams and technical drawings, this sort of thing. So, anyway, this was continued, that the merging of the ruling class and the people in a unique partnership increased with the mass mobilization of World War I and World War II. And so it reached peak, I guess, times in following World War II. Now it continued until probably the early 1990s. Even earlier than that, it was starting to come apart, where the ruling class thought, why do we have to share power with these people? So that unique partnership, the social contract, call it what you will, that unique partnership, that is what's unwinding today, and unwinding with astonishing speed. And once the decision was made to move manufacturing offshore to third world countries, China and so on, and this decision was made by the financial elites. And once that decision was made, then the people that made that sort of technical society possible, they also weren't needed, or very few of them were needed. So their relative power and the social compact, the unique merging and agreement between the parties, and each party accepting that the other had their role and position to play and their contribution to make, the value of their skills and so on. This all changed. The whole equation went into, if you like, reverse. And so that entire class of people, and in the West, we're talking tens of millions of people. In fact, across the entire Western diaspora, we're talking, into the hundreds of millions of people, suddenly are not needed and are viewed not only as well, we don't have to share power with you. You have no value anymore. You're not needed. And a bit like Arthur Miller's play, The Death of the Salesman. These people are just disregarded. In fact, technical salespeople are one of the areas that's also suffered heavily. Technical salespeople are essential in an industrial economy, and they're not needed anymore. You look at, say, in the 1980s, the amount of the biggest category of jobs was technical sales, or one of the biggest categories was technical salespeople. They were, in an industrial economy, you need this. But in the Western economies today, technical salespeople are a tiny proportion of the total number of jobs, which gives you an idea again to how the economy has changed. So my view is that unique compact that gave us the advanced Western economy, accountable government, it gave us independent media, that gave us all the independent courts, all the trappings, all the manifestations of a partnership of the people with the rulers, that's gone. That's just it. That partnership doesn't exist anymore. We don't need you people, because mass warfare, mass mobilization warfare isn't needed. It's a thing of the past. We're into drones and cyber strikes now. That's going to be, is presumed to be, I'm not sure it will be, but it's presumed to be the future of warfare. So we can have black lesbians sitting in an underground bunker driving the drones, and that's all we need now. And the future of the economy is going to be service-based and finance-based. It's going to be cartel-based, monopoly-based, oligopoly-based. So again, we don't need the expertise that would be needed in a competitive industrial market economy, because it's not industrial anymore. It's a not competitive market anymore. So we just simply don't need those people. And yet those people are still hanging around, and they're still wanting things like accountable government and independent courts and free and fair elections and so on. And these are the white people. It was that industrial partnership was completely white people from top to bottom, 0.1% non-white people. But so it's now the white people aren't needed anymore. And not only that, you still have expectations about accountable government, independent courts. And we can't allow that. So we have to get rid of you, replace you, crush you, and so on. So it's that partnership that's broken down. Now, I would argue that if the West went back to, re-embraced the industrial economy, which means they'd have to move the factories back to the West. And again, advanced value add manufacturing, that's all fine. Then the nature of the partnership would also change. Because once you have an industrial economy like that, an innovative economy, then you have market competition. Now, whether the cartels, the Black Rocks and all these sort of guys, they're not going to take that lying down, because they've got an effective, cartel control of things at the moment at the financial end. But nonetheless, if an industrial economy could be re-embraced, then that would alter the partnership arrangements between the rulers and the ruled, and would thus create the concept of accountable government. And because in a partnership you have to satisfy the partners to some extent. They all have to have something. When you sit around the table, everybody has to have a piece of something. But that partnership was around productivity, excellence, innovation, market competition, being the best, and so on. And that too, of course, is broken down. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback challenge. Thank you for listening.